I had finally done it. After years of saving every penny, I had managed to buy my own house. It wasn't anything extravagant, just a cozy little place tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. But to me, it was perfect. I could already imagine the memories I would make within those walls. The dinners shared with friends, the lazy Sundays spent lounging in the backyard. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of excitement and unpacking. I kept myself busy with arranging furniture and hanging up pictures, reveling in the feeling of finally having a place to call my own. But as the initial rush of moving wore off, I began to notice something strange. It started with the noises. At first, they were barely noticeable, just a faint scratching coming from somewhere deep within the walls. I brushed it off as the house settling, convincing myself that it was perfectly normal for an old building to make strange sounds. But the noises didn't stop. They grew louder, more persistent, echoing through the empty rooms late into the night. I tried to ignore them, burying myself under my pillow and willing myself to sleep. But each night, they seemed to grow louder, more insistent, until they were impossible to ignore. I tried to tell myself that it was a perfectly logical explanation for the noises. Maybe a family of mice had taken up residence within the walls, or perhaps there was a pipe leaking somewhere causing the strange sounds. But then, things started to disappear. It started with small things at first. A spoon here, a can of soup there. I chalked it up to absent-mindedness, blaming my own forgetfulness for misplacing items around the house. But as time went by, the disappearances became more frequent and more noticeable. I would come home from work to find my cupboards bare, the contents of my pantry mysteriously depleted overnight. It was as if someone was living in my house, helping themselves to my food while I was gone. I searched every nook and cranny, desperate for any sign of an intruder, but there was nothing. No footprints, no signs of forced entry, nothing to indicate that anyone else had been inside my home. Then, one day while cleaning the house, I made a chilling discovery. Hidden away in a corner of the basement was a small door, barely noticeable against the faded wallpaper. Curiosity piqued. I approached cautiously, heart pounding in my chest. With trembling hands, I reached out and pushed the door open, revealing a small, cramped space beyond. What I saw inside filled me with horror. The room was tiny, barely big enough to stand in, and strewn with empty food wrappers and discarded trash. And in the far corner, hidden in the shadows, I could see movement, a figure huddled in the darkness, watching me. I stumbled back in shock as I realized the truth. Someone had been living in my walls, lurking in the shadows, feasting on my food, while I slept just a few feet away. With a sense of dread creeping over me, I fled the house, stumbling out into the daylight and dialing 911 with shaking hands. When the police arrived, they searched the house and cautiously ventured into the cramped space, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. To their surprise, they found a makeshift living area, complete with a bed made of old blankets and pillows, along with various stolen items scattered around. And in the corner, crouched in fear, was the intruder. Upon interrogation, the man confessed to sneaking into the house shortly after I had moved in. He had been living in the hidden space for weeks, venturing out only at night to steal food and other necessities. His explanation was one of desperation, having fallen on hard times and resorting to extreme measures to survive. I don't think I will ever feel completely alone in my home again. I never thought I'd find myself in such a terrifying situation, but here I am, recounting the horror that unfolded after me and my partner moved into our seemingly quaint new home. It all started innocently enough. My partner and I had recently purchased a house, a charming little place nestled in a quiet neighborhood. We were thrilled at the prospect of making it our own and creating memories together. Little did we know, those memories would soon be tainted by unspeakable terror. One evening, as we were enjoying some intimate company in the comfort of our living room, our passion inadvertently led to a clumsy collision with the bookshelf. I remember the moment vividly, the brief panic as I closed my eyes, fearing the worst as I waited for the sound of falling objects. But to my relief, there was silence. When I cautiously opened my eyes, I was met with a sight that chilled me to the core. The bookshelf, though untouched by our clumsy encounter, had shifted slightly, revealing a narrow gap behind it. My heart pounding, I scrambled to get dressed, my mind racing with thoughts of what could lie beyond. With trembling hands, I pushed the bookshelf aside and was met with a sight that defied all logic. A set of stairs descended into the darkness, leading to a space that shouldn't exist. Our house was not listed as having a basement, and yet here was undeniable evidence to the contrary. Fear clawed at my insides as I exchanged a worried glance with my partner. Without exchanging a word, we both knew what had to be done. With a deep breath, I took the first step into the unknown, my partner close behind. The air grew heavy and stale as we descended deeper. The only sound was the echo of our footsteps, each one a reminder of the surreal nightmare we had stumbled upon. As we reached the bottom of the staircase, my heart sank at the sight before us. It was a room straight out of a horror movie. Rusty chains hung from the walls, their purpose too sinister to contemplate. Torture implements lay scattered across the floor, each one more disturbing than the last. And in the corner, illuminated by a flickering light, sat a single white plastic chair, a stark contrast to the darkness that surrounded it. And mounted on the wall was an ancient CCTV camera. Its lens stared back at us, a silent witness to the horrors that had unfolded in this hidden chamber. Fear and disbelief gripped me as I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking as I dialed the emergency number. The voice on the other end was calm and reassuring, but I could hear the disbelief in their tone as I frantically tried to explain our situation. Minutes stretched into eternity as we waited for help to arrive, each passing second filled with the dread of what we might encounter next. And then, finally, the sound of approaching sirens broke the silence, filling me with a sense of relief I hadn't known was possible. The police arrived soon after, their expressions grim as they surveyed the scene before them. Questions tumbled from their lips as they began their investigation, but I could offer little in the way of answers. How could I explain the inexplicable horrors we had stumbled upon in our very own home? As we were led away from the scene, I couldn't shake the feeling this would haunt me for the rest of my life. A stark reminder of the darkness that lurks just beneath the surface of the world we know. It all began innocently enough. My husband and I had just welcomed our newborn daughter into the world, and with cramped quarters in our small apartment, it was time for us to find a family home. We stumbled upon what seemed like a stroke of luck, a beautiful house at an unbelievably affordable price. The owners were eager to sell, practically thrusting the keys into our hands as if desperate to rid themselves of the property. At the time, We chalked it up to good fortune and signed the papers without a second thought. The first few weeks in our new home passed without incident. The usual chaos of unpacking and settling in kept us occupied, and any odd noises or creaks in the night were dismissed as the quirks of an old house. But then, as the years went by, little signs began to surface, subtle hints that something was amiss. It started with our daughter, Emily. At first, we thought nothing of her chatter about her new friend. Imaginary companions were a common phase for children her age, after all. But as the days stretched into weeks, her obsession with her unseen playmate became increasingly concerning. She would spend hours giggling and whispering to someone that only she could see. My unease grew when Emily began insisting that her friend join us for meals, setting out an extra place at the table and talking to the empty chair beside her. I exchanged worried glances with my husband, but we both agreed that it was likely just a passing phase. However, things took a chilling turn one evening when I went to tuck Emily into bed. As I kissed her forehead and turned to leave, she grabbed my hand, her eyes wide with an intensity I had never seen in her before. "But the man wants to play with me," she whispered, her voice barely above a breathy murmur. Confused and more than a little frustrated, I tried to reason with her. "Oh, honey, there is no man," I said gently, hoping to dispel whatever imaginary scenario she had concocted. But just as the words left my lips, a loud crash erupted from the closet. Toys clattered to the floor, their electronic voices springing to life in a discordant symphony of sound. I froze, my heart hammering in my chest, as Emily's laughter rang out in the room. "See, Mom? I said he wanted to play with me," she exclaimed, her joyous eyes chilling me to the bone. In that moment, I knew that something was terribly wrong. I scooped Emily into my arms and fled from her room, the echoes of her laughter following me down the hall. I tried to explain to my husband what had happened, but he brushed off my concerns with a dismissive wave of his hand. He attributed Emily's behavior to an overactive imagination, refusing to entertain the idea that something paranormal lurked within the walls of our home. Desperate for answers, I turned to the internet, scouring forums and websites for any clue that might shed light on our predicament. And it was there, buried deep within the archives of local history, that I stumbled upon the truth. A previous owner of the house had been a single father, his life shattered by tragedy when his daughter was killed in a car accident. Distraught and consumed by grief, he had taken his own life, his body discovered hanging in that very closet that now housed Emily's toys.